Over 60 years later, revelations from Sinatra's inner circle shed new light on his perspective. Join Factsverse as we examine what Sinatra uncovered about the final days of his close friend Marilyn. Monroe's affairs with the Kennedys. Marilyn Monroe's rumored affairs with John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy have long captivated the public's imagination. Monroe first met JFK in the 50s, likely beginning an intimate relationship around the time of his 1960 presidential campaign. Their affair was fostered by mutual friend Frank Sinatra, who allowed them to meet at his Palm Springs home for discreet rendezvous. Following JFK's election victory, Monroe memorably serenaded the new president with a sultry rendition of Happy Birthday, Mr. President in 1962. This highly publicized performance further fueled speculation of an illicit romance. According to Monroe's confidants, she cherished private pillow talk with JFK, in which he would share perspectives on world affairs. Monroe saw herself as Jack's intellectual companion, not just a casual fling. Their paths crossed frequently in 1961 and 62 within JFK's inner circle. Some historians posit RFK used his growing friendship with Monroe to ingratiate himself to his brother. Others claim it was a romantic rivalry in which RFK pursued Monroe partly to spite JFK. RFK's personal phone records show lengthy conversations between his office and Monroe's home, implying late-night intimacy. Whatever the truth, Monroe found herself enthralled by the charismatic brothers, especially Jack. She saw them as her guides to the heights of power in Washington. Tragically, once JFK replaced Monroe with newer mistresses like Judith Exner, he and RFK abruptly severed contact with the actress. This deep rejection by her Camelot idols was emotionally crushing for Marilyn Monroe. Having invested over a year of intimate access to America's royal family, Monroe was ruthlessly cast aside once she was no longer amusing to the Kennedys. In the final months of her life, Monroe tried desperately to reconnect with her former lovers and understand why she had been heartlessly abandoned. This cruel rejection by such influential men profoundly damaged the already fragile actress. Monroe's stay at Cal Neva Lodge. In the final weekend of her life, Marilyn Monroe stayed at the Cal Neva Lodge on the shore of Lake Tahoe. The resort was partially owned by Frank Sinatra, who frequently allowed Monroe to stay free of charge as a courtesy to his close friend. Little did Sinatra know this weekend would be the last time he'd see Monroe alive. Monroe had traveled to Cal Neva in the company of her ex-husband, Joe DiMaggio. Unbeknownst to the public at the time, they had quietly reconciled and were making plans to remarry. According to Sinatra's eyewitness account, Monroe was in a highly emotional state throughout her weekend there. She anxiously vacillated between elation about her reunion with DiMaggio and despair over her severed ties with the Kennedy brothers. Sinatra remembered Monroe consuming cocktails and pills in alarming quantities as she vented to him about feeling abandoned by the Kennedys. At one point at the weekend, Monroe accidentally overdosed on barbiturates and Sinatra had to rush to her hotel room. He found her unconscious and quickly took measures to revive her, including dousing her face with cold water. After she regained consciousness, Sinatra demanded she accompany him on a brisk walk around the resort grounds to stay alert. Witnesses recall seeing a distraught Sinatra guiding an extremely drowsy Monroe around the Cal Neva cabins, propping her up to prevent another overdose. Sinatra later said he had never seen Monroe so emotionally unraveled as she was that weekend. Unknown to either Monroe or Sinatra, tabloid reporters were stalking the resort, trying to snap photos of the actress. The press had caught wind that Monroe was secretly back with DiMaggio and intended to announce their marriage plans at an upcoming press conference. Eager for gossip fodder, the paparazzi attempted to document evidence of the reconciliation. The media encroachment compounded Monroe's anxiety and substance intake during her stay. Meanwhile, DiMaggio remained nearby at a separate hotel, coordinating with Sinatra to keep Monroe safe and try to stabilize her. But her emotional state only deteriorated further. Sinatra's belief she was murdered. In the immediate aftermath of Monroe's death, whispers swirled that she had been in fact murdered to silence her. Sinatra gave credence to these chilling theories based on evidence he uncovered. Sinatra's lawyer, Mickey Rudin, informed the singer that Monroe had been killed to stop her from holding a tell-all press conference about the Kennedys. Sinatra also had underworld connections linking Monroe's death to the mafia. Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana said Monroe was snuffed out by an organized crime figure who ran in both Kennedy and Sinatra circles. Additionally, Los Angeles mobster Johnny Roselli told Sinatra that Monroe was purposefully silenced before she could damage the Kennedys' reputations. Piecing together what he knew of Monroe's final days, along with the revelations from Rudin and his mafia contacts, Sinatra became convinced that Robert Kennedy and Jimmy Hoffa conspired to have Monroe murdered via lethal injection. Sinatra thought they hired a corrupt medical examiner to administer a fatal barbiturate suppository while she was unconscious. With her major announcement about reuniting with DiMaggio on the horizon, the theory was that Kennedy and Hoffa felt the bombshell actress needed to be stopped from airing details of her affairs. They couldn't risk a national scandal rupturing Camelot's idyllic image ahead of JFK's re-election bid. Sinatra also suspected the mob held up their end of this quid pro quo bargain by guaranteeing union support for Kennedy in the '64 campaign. In Sinatra's mind, Monroe was a victim of a high-level political assassination. He shared his belief that she was snuffed out because Monroe's re-emergence threatened too many powerful interests. For decades after Monroe's passing, Sinatra continued investigating theories around her possible murder. He financed private investigations into potential co-conspirators and scoured Monroe's phone records and medical reports for clues. He felt compelled to achieve some justice for his dear friend Monroe and expose those responsible. While never able to definitively prove his allegations, Sinatra remained utterly convinced that the corrupt forces of Hollywood, Washington, and organized crime had colluded to end Monroe's life. He carried resentment towards the Kennedys, Jimmy Hoffa, and the mafia leaders he held accountable for Monroe's tragic end. Their close bond. Though never romantically involved, Monroe and Sinatra shared an incredibly close platonic bond. They formed an intimate friendship based on their similar experiences as stars navigating fame. Both felt isolated and burdened by their public image and notoriety. They could relax together, though, and open up honestly with each other about their struggles. According to Sinatra's friend Peter Lawford, they had a rapport like Bogey and Bacall. Losing Monroe devastated Sinatra and left an irreplaceable void in his life. Besides grieving her loss, he deeply regretted being unable to rescue someone he cared for so dearly. He pledged to never forget the special connection they shared, a bond allowing two lost souls to find solace. A fateful introduction. The story of DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe is woven with the threads of fame, passion, and tragedy. Their paths crossed when DiMaggio, fresh from retirement from baseball, expressed a desire to meet the up-and-coming actress. Despite Monroe's initial hesitation, their first meeting in 1952 laid the foundation for a relationship that became the subject of intense media scrutiny. Monroe, who had been wary of DiMaggio's sports star persona, found herself surprised pleasantly by his demeanor. DiMaggio, on the other hand, was immediately taken with Monroe's charm and beauty. From courtship to marriage. Their courtship was a whirlwind, marked by the challenges of maintaining a relationship in the public eye. Monroe's career was taking off, and DiMaggio was adjusting to life off the field. They managed to keep their romance relatively private until their marriage in 1954. The wedding, a quick elopement, was besieged by fans and the press, signaling the intense public fascination with their union. This fascination continued to follow them throughout their marriage. The price of fame. As Monroe's star rose, the pressure on their marriage increased. DiMaggio, who had been a hero on the baseball diamond, found himself in unfamiliar territory as the spouse of a Hollywood icon. His conservative views clashed with Monroe's image as a sex symbol, and his discomfort with her fame became a source of tension. The flying skirt scene from The 7-Year Itch is perhaps the most emblematic moment of this tension. DiMaggio was reportedly furious over the public's reaction to Monroe's performance, revealing the cracks in their relationship. The tug of war. DiMaggio's desire for a traditional wife and Monroe's ambition to be more than a Hollywood stereotype were at odds. DiMaggio wanted a quiet family life, while Monroe was not ready to step away from the spotlight. This tug of war between their desires created an environment ripe for conflict. The breaking point. The marriage reached its breaking point quickly. The public fights, the jealousy, and the relentless media attention took their toll. Monroe's filing for divorce, citing mental cruelty, was a public admission of the private turmoil that had characterized their short-lived marriage. Aftermath. In the aftermath of their separation, both DiMaggio and Monroe reflected on what had gone wrong. DiMaggio, ever the private man, retreated from the public discussion of his personal life, while Monroe's struggles became more public. The end of their marriage didn't mark the end of their story, however. DiMaggio's continued devotion to Monroe, even after her death, suggested a complexity to their relationship that went beyond the typical Hollywood romance narrative. Unwavering devotion. Despite the tumultuous end to their marriage, DiMaggio's devotion to Monroe remained steadfast. After Monroe's death, DiMaggio took charge of her funeral arrangements, barring Hollywood's elite, and ensuring the ceremony was dignified and private. For years, he had fresh roses delivered to her resting place twice a week, a silent yet powerful display of his enduring affection. The quest for truth. DiMaggio's silence on Monroe's death was almost deafening. He never publicly endorsed the theory that Monroe's death was a suicide, and his skepticism fueled speculation about the true cause of her untimely demise. His protectiveness over Monroe's legacy and his quest for the truth about her death added a layer of mystery to an already enigmatic relationship. Lingering doubts. People close to him knew that Joe harbored deep-seated doubts about the official narrative of Monroe's passing. He couldn't reconcile the Monroe he knew with the idea that she had taken her own life. His suspicions pointed towards the murky waters of her later life, her connections with powerful men, her knowledge of whispered secrets, and her often troubled personal life. He wondered if her death was entangled with her liaisons, which included rumored affairs with high-profile figures. DiMaggio's reticence to accept the verdict of suicide hinted at a web of relationships that Monroe navigated, relationships that may have had a hand in her demise. While his beliefs remain unproven, they added a poignant layer to the enduring puzzle of Monroe's death. The weight of public life. Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe's relationship unfolded under the glare of the spotlight. The marriage was a high-wire act performed without a net, and each step was scrutinized by an audience hungry for both their success and their failure. The pressures of this public existence magnified their personal struggles, DiMaggio's jealousy, Monroe's search for validation, and their mutual quest for an identity beyond the headlines. Their story is a tale of how the shimmering facade of celebrity can mask the reality of personal anguish. The more adored you are by the masses, the more isolated you can become. The romance of Joe and Marilyn was a study in contrasts, a juxtaposition of the private and the public, the intimate and the universal. Their love story was one of intense passion played out against a backdrop of equally intense conflict. It was a relationship that straddled glittering fame and profound solitude, marked by moments of shared triumph and personal tragedy. The complexity of connection. Joe and Marilyn's story continues to captivate us because it offers a window into the complex nature of human connection, especially under that microscope of fame. They were icons of their time, and they grappled with issues that resonate on a deeply human level: the search for love, the need for understanding, and the desire for peace. Their story is a tapestry of light and shadow, reminder that even the lives of the most celebrated figures are woven with threads of universal human experience. Reflecting on the relationship, we're confronted with timeless lessons about the nature of love and the inevitability of loss. It's a narrative that speaks to the heart of what it means to navigate life in love. The resilience of the human spirit. Joe and Marilyn's legacy transcends the glamour and the scandal, reaching into the realm of resilience. Their journey together had challenges, but also demonstrated the capacity for growth, for forgiveness, and for a deep, abiding connection that outlasted their time together. Marilyn's dating life. Marilyn Monroe's love life was the subject of much speculation and fascination throughout her career. While it's challenging to definitively establish the complete list of men she dated, there were several prominent figures with whom she had relationships. Here are some of the men who were rumored to have been involved with Monroe, along with those that she confirmed dating. Monroe and Frank Sinatra had a rumored affair during the late 1950s, but the details and duration of their relationship remains uncertain. Monroe and Marlon Brando were linked romantically during the filming of The Misfits in 1960. Their relationship, while short-lived, was the subject of much speculation. During the filming of Let's Make Love in 1960, Monroe had an alleged affair with French actor Yves Montand, which caused tension in his marriage. There's been ongoing speculation about Marilyn's involvement with President John F. Kennedy. While the exact nature of their relationship has been disputed, it's widely believed they had a brief affair. Her connection with Robert Kennedy, John's brother, is also the subject of rumors and speculation. Reports suggest they had a relationship, though the details remain unclear as well. Marilyn's marriages. Monroe's first marriage was to James Dougherty in 1942, when she was just 16. That marriage was short-lived and they divorced in 1946, with Monroe beginning to pursue her acting career shortly after. But her marriage to baseball legend Joe DiMaggio remains one of the most iconic and talked about relationships in Hollywood history. The couple walked down the aisle January 14, 1954, in a private ceremony that captivated the media and public attention. Monroe and DiMaggio's courtship and subsequent marriage attracted significant media coverage as they represented the union of two highly recognizable figures from different realms of fame. Their relationship was considered a glamorous and idealized union, often portrayed as the epitome of love and success. But despite the initial excitement surrounding their marriage, Monroe and DiMaggio faced challenges that ultimately led to its dissolution. The pressures of their respective careers, Monroe's intense public scrutiny, and differing expectations placed strain on their relationship. DiMaggio, a private and fiercely protective person, struggled with Monroe's status as a sex symbol and the constant attention it brought. Their marriage lasted a mere 9 months, with Monroe filing for divorce in October of 1954. Though the exact reasons for the separation aren't fully known, reports suggest that their differing lifestyles, conflicting schedules, and DiMaggio's possessiveness were contributing factors. Despite the split, they maintained a connection and briefly reconciled in 1955. But the relationship didn't withstand the pressures and complexities they faced. In the years following the divorce, Monroe and DiMaggio remained on amicable terms, and he continued to be a supportive presence in her life. When she passed away in 1962, Joe was devastated and played a prominent role in her funeral arrangements and memorial services. Marilyn next married renowned playwright Arthur Miller. The two influential figures tied the knot June 29, 1956, in a private ceremony attended by close friends and family. Their relationship began in 1951 when they met through a mutual friend. Miller, an esteemed playwright known for works like Death of a Salesman and The Crucible, saw in Monroe a vibrant and captivating woman who defied the stereotypes associated with her public image. Their marriage brought together two highly creative people, each grappling with their own personal demons. While Miller initially found inspiration in Monroe's vivaciousness and vulnerability, their relationship faced numerous challenges. The disparity in their lifestyles, with Miller favoring a more intellectual and politically driven world, while Monroe navigated the pressures of Hollywood, often led to clashes and misunderstandings. And Monroe's struggles with mental health and the pressures of fame further complicated their marriage. Despite those challenges, they shared moments of happiness and creative collaboration. Miller penned the screenplay for the film The Misfits, specifically written for Monroe. But the marriage ended in 1961, ending the relationship after nearly 5 years. Marilyn and Natasha. Monroe's relationship with Natasha Lytis played a significant role in her early career and personal life. Natasha, a drama coach and actress, became Monroe's acting mentor and close companion during a pivotal period in her rise to stardom. Lytis began working with Monroe in the late 40s, helping her develop her acting skills and refine her craft. Under Lytis's guidance, Monroe made significant progress in honing her acting abilities and gaining confidence in her performances. But their relationship extended beyond a professional mentorship. It's widely believed that the two were involved in a romantic relationship during their time together. Though both parties were discreet about the nature of their connection, there were indications of a deeper emotional and intimate bond. Though, according to reports, Marilyn once confided in her friend, Ted Jordan, that she and Natasha were indeed in a relationship. She's reported as saying about the relationship, quote, "Sex is something you do with people you like. What could be wrong with a natural act?" Natasha's influence on Monroe's life was both positive and challenging. While she provided guidance and support, she also exerted control over Monroe's personal and professional decisions, which led to conflicts that strained their relationship. Marilyn and Marlene and Barbara. The rumor suggesting a romantic involvement between Monroe and Marlene Dietrich originated from a controversial biography written by Anthony Summers. In the book, Summers claimed that Monroe and Dietrich had a secret lesbian affair during the early years of Monroe's career. But the allegations lack substantial evidence, and it's unclear how much truth lies behind the rumor. Similarly, rumors surrounding Monroe and Barbara Stanwyck have also circulated. Some accounts suggest that the two actresses had a brief affair during the 50s, but there is a lack of concrete evidence to support these claims. Marilyn and Joan. The relationship between Marilyn Monroe and Joan Crawford has been a subject of speculation among fans and scholars of Hollywood history. For a while, there were only whispers and rumors that the two engaged in a brief romantic affair. But later, Marilyn herself confessed to them sleeping together at least once, or at least as far as author Matthew Smith asserts. He claims to have audio recordings of the late bombshell talking about her affair with Collins. He says that in the recordings, Marilyn talks about her fling with the legendary actress. It apparently happened only one time, though according to Smith, via the recordings, it was a pretty raucous time for both women. In the audio, Marilyn is said to have described it this way, quote, "We went to Joan's bedroom. Crawford had a gigantic orgasm and shrieked like a maniac. The next time I saw Crawford, she wanted another round. I told her straight I didn't much enjoy doing it with a woman." Joan and Marilyn's feud. Joan and Marilyn didn't only have a romantic fling, they also had a bit of a feud. This was par for the course for Joan Collins, who was well known for her various Hollywood feuds. But it was a departure from Marilyn, and to her credit, it was a fairly one-sided feud. It went down at the 1961 Golden Globes. Marilyn was given a gold lame gown designed for the event by William Travilla. It was a tight and low-cut number and was essentially sewn onto Marilyn's figure. It was so tight that Joe DiMaggio refused to show up to the event alongside her, as it offended his more conservative nature. Marilyn's team advised her it wouldn't be a good idea to wear it to the dinner and dancing before the actual awards ceremony. They were afraid it would rip. So she arrived 2 hours after the awards started, basically showing up before her category was being announced. So it's not surprising she caused quite a stir when she walked by. The next day, gossip columnist Floribel Muir wrote that Marilyn outshined the other women in the room, saying, "With one little twist of her derriere, Marilyn stole the show. Two other screen stars, Joan Crawford and Lana Turner, got only casual attention." This statement enraged Collins, who was known for being vindictive. So she went to her friend, gossip columnist Bob Thomas, and basically took Marilyn to task. She said, "Those of us in the industry just shuddered. Sex plays a tremendously important part in every person's life, but they don't like to see it flaunted in their faces. The publicity has gone too far." It was a pretty major diss from the actress. Marilyn, to her credit, didn't take the bait. She released a statement praising Joan, saying that Joan had always been a symbol of kindness, and even went as far as to say perhaps Joan had been talking impulsively without thinking. Marilyn's statement also said, "All I could think of was, why should she select me to blast? She's a great star. I'm just starting." Jim Doherty. When Monroe was 16 and still going by her birth name, Norma Jean Baker, she married Jim Doherty, one of her classmates at Van Nuys High School. The two walked down the aisle in 1942, and while the marriage started fairly happy, it began to fall apart when Doherty joined the Merchant Marines and Marilyn began modeling. By 1946, just 4 years after exchanging vows, the couple filed for divorce. Years later, in 1976, Doherty told People magazine if he hadn't joined the Merchant Marines during WW2, he believed he and Monroe would still have been together. Charlie Chaplin Jr. It's rumored Marilyn and the legendary silent film star's son, Charlie Jr., had a fling in 1947. Their relationship supposedly came to an end when Charlie caught Monroe fooling around in his brother's bed. In Chaplin's 1960 autobiography, he referenced this affair. Anthony Summers likewise made a mention of it in his book Goddess, The Secret Lives of Marilyn Monroe. John F. Kennedy. JFK and Marilyn Monroe reportedly got close and cozy in '62 while Kennedy was married to Jackie O. A friend of Frank Sinatra, Tony Appadisano, told People magazine in 2021 that JFK and Marilyn's affair was purely sexual, as Monroe didn't want to break up his marriage. Accounts of Monroe's affairs with the Kennedy brothers have been reported in books, interviews, and news stories for decades. But there's very little, if any, concrete evidence to support these claims. But just watching the footage of Marilyn singing her very enthusiastic rendition of Happy Birthday to the late president in 1962 speaks volumes about the kind of relationship they had. It's very obvious Monroe harbored a tremendous amount of attraction for the Kennedys, and it wouldn't take that much of a stretch to the imagination to picture the two sharing some after-hours one-on-one time together. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more. And stick around for more about Marilyn's lovers. Robert Kennedy. Supposedly, after ending her relationship with JFK, Monroe got intimate with his brother Robert sometime in the mid-60s. Milton Berle. This comedian and Marilyn first met while on the set of the 1948 film Ladies of the Chorus. Even though he was officially courting starlet Adele Jurgens at the time, Berle was the one who came out and revealed that he and the young up-and-coming actress had been involved with each other. Berle has been called the first superstar of the age of television. He and Monroe even starred in the 1960 film Let's Make Love Together, a pretty appropriate name given the context. Natasha Lytis. Monroe met Lytis, her drama instructor and lifelong friend, when she signed to Columbia Pictures in 1948. After meeting, the two became closer than peas in a pod, and while it's based purely on speculation, it's thought that the two enjoyed a romantic relationship as well. Monroe grew so dependent on Lytis, she refused to shoot scenes without her presence. The rumor mill only continued to pump out stories speculating the nature of their relationship after Monroe moved into Lytis's home in 1952 to prepare for her role in the film Don't Bother to Knock. Eyebrows were further raised when Lytis became openly hostile to Monroe's male partners, Joe DiMaggio in particular. She was very protective of her bestie and didn't want to see anyone hurt her. Was this merely a best friend looking out for her platonic pal, or was there something deeper at play? We may never know. Monroe's other alleged female romances. Rumors persisted for years that Monroe was either bisexual or an outright lesbian. Other women she supposedly had been entangled with include Barbara Stanwyck and Marlene Dietrich. Monroe herself touched on the issue in her 1954 autobiography, in which she revealed that a man who had kissed her once before had told her she might have been a lesbian because apparently she had little response to males, and by males he meant himself. When he told her that, she was still trying to figure herself out, but according to what she wrote in that book, after she'd fallen in love for the first time, she finally knew what she was, and that wasn't a lesbian. Even so, it is possible Marilyn wrote this as a means to deflect these persistent rumors. Elia Kazan. Kazan has been called one of Tinseltown's all-time greatest directors. He had admitted to having a brief affair with Monroe while he was still married to his wife, Molly Thatcher, a playwright famous for writing plays such as Rosemary, The Alligator, and The Egghead. The world learned of this affair when letters between Kazan and his wife were unearthed that revealed he had very little shame for getting involved with her. In these pieces of private correspondence, he said that at the time of their romance, Monroe was what he called a little stray cat, and nothing like the star she would later become. Joe DiMaggio. Jumpin' Joe and Marilyn Monroe were introduced on a blind date in 1952. He later referred to her as a double-play combo. She was not only stunningly beautiful, but DiMaggio also found her to be quite charming. He had high hopes of her someday mothering his children and becoming a more traditional homemaker. Monroe likewise had longed for a stable home and children and became infatuated by the legendary baseball player. She respected him for the fact that he hadn't tried to make a pass at her right off the bat. She admired him for how he treated her like she was something special. The two lovebirds tied the knot on January 14, 1954, in a low-key ceremony at San Francisco's City Hall. But unfortunately, problems immediately arose when Joe, who was used to being the center of attention, became jealous of his new wife's rapid rising fame. The couple ended up divorcing later that year in October, just 9 months after their wedding day. Monroe later revealed that the straw that broke the camel's back was her infamous skirt fluttering scene in The 7-Year Itch. Jo was furious she would show off so much of her body and wasn't going to tolerate it. But even though they split, DiMaggio and Monroe remained close friends until Marilyn's death. Until his death in 1999, Jo would reportedly visit Marilyn's grave 3 times a week. Marlon Brando. Monroe and Brando were 2 of the most famed actors of their era, and the 2 were rumored to have dated in 1955, shortly after Marilyn and Joe DiMaggio parted ways. Arthur Miller. Marilyn said it was love at first sight when she met playwright Arthur Miller on the set of the 1950 film As Young as You Feel. But even though they shared mutual attraction, the 2 didn't meet back up until 1955, after Marilyn and DiMaggio's divorce had been finalized and she'd moved to the Big Apple. After a brief and clandestine courtship, the 2 were married in 1956. Marilyn said Arthur was the first man she'd ever fallen in love with. She loved how serious he was while still having a great sense of humor. While it seemed at first like Monroe was flourishing away from the chaos that was Hollywood, eventually her and Miller's relationship began to sour. Monroe's substance abuse issues created serious problems both on set and back at home. Not long before the 1961 film The Misfits premiered, she and Miller filed for divorce. Frank Sinatra. Old Blue Eyes was one of the most noteworthy relationships of Marilyn's short life, even though the 2 only briefly dated after her divorce from Arthur Miller. Marilyn stayed at the rubber tree plant crooner's house for a spell after moving back to Hollywood. Their romance, however, cooled by 1961 when Sinatra got engaged to Juliet Prowse. Even though they didn't keep their romantic flame alive, Sinatra and Monroe remained close friends until her death. Jerry Lewis. In an interview with GQ in 2011, the since-deceased comedian revealed he had had a secret romance with Monroe around the same time many people believe she had been involved with JFK. Lewis further claimed he knew for certain Monroe had never been involved with JFK in the first place. Martin Landau. Martin Landau was one of the first male stars of note to work alongside Marilyn, having struck up a friendship with her while the 2 were studying together at the Actors Studio in New York. His early impression of Marilyn was that she was incredibly shy and reserved, especially in comparison to the more boisterous females present at the studio. But when Martin got to know Marilyn better, he quickly realized there was a dark side to her innocence. As they worked together, he grew to appreciate not only her beauty, but also her immense acting talents. According to Martin, there was something authentically disturbed about Marilyn that allowed her to convey deep emotion. While it impressed Martin, it also frightened him. The actor claimed to believe the actress had demons. Don Murray. Don could be seen performing alongside Marilyn Monroe in the film Bus Stop, released in 1956. He found himself impressed by the depth of Marilyn's emotional conveyance. However, he also found himself perturbed by the actress's apparent inability to perform professionally on set at certain times. Apparently, Marilyn suffered from a lack of confidence around the time that had grown so severe she would often break out into a physical rash. This made it hard for Don to be fully attracted to Marilyn, although he certainly appreciated her. He claimed Marilyn seemed terrified to step in front of the cameras during the filming of the movie, which he found odd given that she was one of the most adored and lusted after celebrities on the planet at the time. It seems the public's blind adoration was no remedy for whatever ailment was afflicting poor Marilyn's broken psyche. Laurence Olivier. Laurence Olivier performed with Marilyn in the 1957 film The Prince and the Showgirl. He was quick to note there was something authentically concerning about her, but that didn't stop Laurence from falling slightly in love with her. Despite the fact he found himself both charmed and impressed by Marilyn, he eventually lost his patience as she began to exude more and more erratic behavior. Marilyn had become notoriously scatterbrained by the time of production and apparently had a hard time being very prudent when it came to filming schedules. Laurence claimed Marilyn would often show up as many as 4 hours late for filming, which was something that eventually caused him to lose respect for the actress. Celebrities and billionaires love to collect art, which is a great way to invest and diversify your portfolio away from market volatility, like we're experiencing right now. But you no longer have to have Jeff Bezos' wealth to invest in fine art. That's because our partner, Masterworks.io, has opened the door to fine art collecting for everyone. Even if you don't have an 8-figure net worth, you can now invest in works of art just like this one by Picasso. Masterworks has made the process incredibly easy. Head on over to Masterworks.io, select the number of shares of an art piece you want to own, and then buy them. Now that you've invested in that painting, you can either wait for the piece to be sold or sell your shares through the secondary market. Masterworks investors recently received a 31.7% net return from their sale of George Condo's Staring into Space. Receiving a $1 billion-plus valuation, Masterworks has been getting a lot of attention. But if you click the link in the description, you can skip the line and start investing in fine art today. Richard Widmark. Richard Widmark was an actor who worked with Marilyn in the 1952 film Don't Bother to Knock, several years before either Don Murray or Laurence Olivier experienced their troubles with her. Like Don later claimed, Richard said Marilyn seemed like a nervous wreck on the set, so much so he began to grow concerned for the young actress. He found her habits to be self-destructive and feared for the worst. A decade later, Widmark's fears were proven accurate when she passed away at a tragically young age. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and stick around for more about Marilyn Monroe. Clark Gable. 1960's The Misfits proved to be the last feature that either Marilyn Monroe or Clark Gable ever completed. Marilyn Monroe's then-husband, playwright Arthur Miller, scripted the film. At that point in young Marilyn Monroe's life, things had gotten pretty bad in regards to her mental state. According to Clark, filming the picture with the star made him feel so stressed out, he felt he was going to have a heart attack on set. The actor did end up having a heart attack just after the film wrapped, and was pronounced dead within a little over a week. Marilyn Monroe was never officially blamed for Clark's death, though his ominous words certainly proved prophetic. Tommy Noonan. Tommy was one of Marilyn Monroe's co-stars in the 1953 feature Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Infamously, an interviewer asked Tommy, just after filming a romantic scene with Marilyn, what it had been like to kiss her. Tommy replied it felt like being swallowed alive, and Marilyn was within hearing distance. As soon as she heard Tommy's remark, she was said to have burst out in tears in front of everyone. Jane Russell, another co-star on the feature, did her best to comfort the renowned leading lady. Though Tommy likely didn't intend to hurt Marilyn's feelings, he had no way of knowing just how damaged and fragile she really was. Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon worked with Marilyn on Some Like It Hot in 1959. While he certainly saw Marilyn could often be difficult to work with, he found himself too in awe of her comedic prowess to take up any issue with the late beloved actress. Still, Jack did note that Marilyn had a tendency to not be the most professional actress at certain points during filming, often needing several dozen takes before she could accurately read a line. It seems that, as hard as Marilyn tried, she could never quite overcome her nerves enough to let her natural talent out in front of the cameras. Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum was another of Marilyn's male co-star who commented that it seemed like the actress wasn't always mentally sound. He was one of many to note that Marilyn's confidence didn't always match the way audiences viewed her, and she never quite saw herself as a woman who was conventionally attractive. Robert commented on the fact that Marilyn seemed somewhat immature, as if being surrounded by so many handlers in her professional life had dulled her senses. The two had first met before Marilyn's rise to fame, and they went on to work together in the feature River of No Return. Tony Curtis. Tony and Marilyn were romantically involved in the late 40s, shortly before Marilyn's unprecedented rise to superstardom. According to Tony's recollections later in life, the two sparked up that romance once again a decade later while filming Some Like It Hot, though both of them were married to other people at the time. While doing press for the movie, Tony was asked the classic question of what it was like to kiss the beloved Marilyn Monroe. Tony shot back that kissing the actress was akin to kissing Hitler. He was being sarcastic, though the remark has often been used to prove that the actor had an authentic distaste for Marilyn. Given that Tony spent the later years of his life attempting to convince people that he and Marilyn had been involved in an affair during filming, it would stand to reason he enjoyed kissing her more than kissing Hitler. Dean Martin. At the end of her career, Marilyn was attempting to film a feature called Something's Got to Give alongside Dean Martin. By then, her mental state had become so bad that 20th Century Fox attempted to fire her from the picture. Dean claimed he'd quit if Marilyn was replaced, which prompted 20th Century Fox to allow her to stay. Sadly, her death ended up preventing the picture from being completed. During Hollywood's golden age, there were certain celebrities that shined brighter, and one of the preeminent icons of the time was Marilyn Monroe, who died tragically young after rocketing to superstardom. A slightly lesser icon from the time period was Tony Curtis, who was Marilyn's co-star in Some Like It Hot. As one of Marilyn's most popular features, her performance alongside Tony in the film remains one of the ways fans know the actress best. Because of this, her image has become intrinsically tied with Tony Curtis, making it easy for the public to be convinced the two might have actually been in love. Almost immediately after Curtis filmed Some Like It Hot, critics began drilling him about what it was like to kiss one of the most lusted-after female celebrities of the time. Tony memorably was quoted as saying that kissing Marilyn was akin to kissing Hitler, a recently deceased political figure. Of course, the public was shocked to hear this claim, though Tony later claimed the quote had been taken out of context. According to Tony, he had said the remark sarcastically because he felt the question was absurd. If Tony's rectifications of his infamous remark are to be believed, he found the notion the interviewer would even need to ask whether kissing Marilyn was enjoyable or not to be ridiculous. Tony apparently enjoyed kissing Marilyn very much so they might have even had an affair. Marilyn was already one of the biggest stars in Hollywood at the time, and Tony Curtis was comparatively not as big of a deal. Over the course of her tragically short lifetime, Marilyn was romantically involved with heavy hitters like Frank Sinatra and Joe DiMaggio, with the actress seemingly having been able to get pretty much any man she wanted. If Tony is to be believed, his name can be added to the list of men Marilyn Monroe was romantically involved with. Not only that, Tony claimed before his death that he had gotten Marilyn pregnant during their affair. Marilyn was married to playwright Arthur Miller at the time, and the two were actively trying to have a child together. Marilyn was verifiably pregnant during filming of the movie, though she later publicly suffered a miscarriage. Tony went on to claim the child Marilyn was pregnant with was his, though Marilyn wasn't alive to verify this. If Marilyn and Tony were truly involved in an affair during the filming of Some Like It Hot, then perhaps Tony's remarks regarding his female co-star and Adolf Hitler had been an attempt by the actor to cover their tracks, since Tony didn't come forward with the tale of the supposed affair until long after Marilyn's 1962 death. We'll likely never know the truth. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First for more, and stick around for more about Marilyn and Tony. Although Tony Curtis's remarks comparing kissing Marilyn to kissing Hitler were certainly shocking, Tony adamantly maintained later in life that the remarks had been entirely sarcastic. According to the late actor, he'd simply become tired of hearing the same mundane questions over and over again and wanted to provoke an interesting response to entertain himself. Other theories include the actor trying to cover his tracks regarding a possible extramarital affair that he and Marilyn may have been engaged in, or the possibility that Tony Curtis had simply felt true and honest loathing for his co-star. If Tony had been trying to disguise the fact that he and Marilyn were truly in love, then his Hitler remark worked. For decades after he made the remark, while doing press for Some Like It Hot, rumors persisted that the two stars despised each other. Marilyn passed away in 1962, only a few years after the supposed affair had occurred. She was never given the opportunity to speak up and clear her name. So the claims of Tony Curtis are the closest thing we have to go off of to make sense of what happened. Sadly, it's hard to tell exactly what the truth is given Tony's stories. While he claimed up until his death that he and Marilyn had actually been in love to the point where they'd been lovers during filming, many continue to question the truth of these claims. One thing remains certain, and that's that Marilyn Monroe was pregnant and later suffered a miscarriage. She and Arthur Miller had certainly been trying to have a baby to no avail, and they never ended up making good on their attempts. Meanwhile, Tony was married to actress Janet Leigh at the time, and the marriage certainly proved Tony wasn't impotent. The famous Hollywood couple went on to procreate, yielding subsequent Hollywood star Jamie Lee Curtis. Though Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller never had children of their own, Miller did have plenty of children from outside of the short-lived marriage. Marilyn never had any children during her life, dying in 1962 at age 36. She and Arthur had divorced a year prior, and her mental health subsequently took a sharp decline. According to Tony, he and Marilyn Monroe had made a pact with each other to tell Arthur Miller about the fact they'd been having an affair. During the confrontation is when Marilyn apparently revealed to both Tony and her husband she had become pregnant with Tony's child. Following this supposed confrontation, Tony went on to claim he was told by Some Like It Hot's creative staff that he needed to stay away from both Marilyn Monroe and her husband for the rest of shooting. He did so and ended up learning about Marilyn's miscarriage through a third party. It appears Tony and Marilyn didn't have much involvement after this, and Tony didn't speak about their relationship until many decades later. A few years before his death, Tony Curtis released an autobiography called American Prince, a Memoir. The book documented Tony's claims that he'd been involved in an affair with Marilyn, and he further elaborated on the claims in a making-of book detailing behind-the-scenes trivia about the movie. He would also often touch upon the subject in public interviews, referencing his famous remark regarding Marilyn and Adolf Hitler. Tony passed away in 2010 at age 85. Before he and Marilyn became involved in an extramarital affair on the set of Some Like It Hot, Tony Curtis also alleged he and Marilyn had been romantically involved a decade prior in 1949. While the public continues to question whether Marilyn and Tony could even stand to be around each other, Tony claimed up until his death that the times he spent with Marilyn had been some of the most unbelievable of his life. Jane Russell's humble rise to fame. She was born Ernestine Jane Geraldine Russell in Minnesota on June 21, 1921. She was the oldest and only daughter of 5 children. Growing up with 4 brothers, she became quite the tomboy. Russell's father was a former first lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and her mother once performed in a traveling revue. In 1930, Russell's family moved to the San Fernando Valley in California. It was there that Jane's father worked as a manager at a soap manufacturing factory. Jane's mom convinced her to take piano lessons while she attended Van Nuys High School. It was around this time she became interested in drama. While she initially intended on studying design, Jane changed her plans after her father died suddenly at age 46. After graduating from high school, Russell became a receptionist. She also did some modeling on the side and, per her mother's suggestion, studied with Max Reinhardt's theatrical workshop with the actress Marie Ospinskaya. In 1952, Marilyn Monroe received Reinhardt's manuscripts, which she intended to be a gift for her instructor, Natasha Leitis. For that, she was heavily criticized by the media and eventually agreed to sell the archive at cost to Reinhardt's son. But as fate would have it, Reinhardt's son then resold the entire collection to a university, earning a sizable profit. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. And stay tuned to see why Jane Russell believed her good friend Marilyn didn't take her own life. The Outlaw. In 1940, Jane signed a 7-year contract drawn up by Howard Hughes, who had also produced a handful of films, including Hell's Angels, The Front Page, and Scarface. Mesmerized by the 19-year-old's physique, Hughes cast Jane in The Outlaw, a peculiar western that Hughes had written. Jane played the part of Rio, a beautiful young woman loved by both Doc Holliday and Billy the Kid. Hughes proceeded to design a protruding bra for Jane, but she refused to wear it. He then arranged for that infamous photo shoot we mentioned, which turned her into one of the most iconic pinups of World War II. The film enraged the censors, and Hughes spent the next 5 years editing his work for general release. Hughes was notorious for his insatiable sexual appetite, but Russell didn't want to be just another one of his conquests. In fact, when he invited her back to his quarters one evening, she insisted he keep his hands to himself. She ended up marrying NFL player Bob Waterfield in 1943, but in her 1989 book, Marilyn Monroe and the Camera, Jane detailed the time she met Marilyn while at a dance. Jim Doherty, Monroe's husband at the time, was wearing a police uniform when he called her over to meet his wife, Norma Jean. Russell looked up to see Jean, aka Monroe, curled up over Doherty's arm. It was an awkward moment, but one she wouldn't soon forget. While The Outlaw turned Jane into a star, her contract with Hughes prevented her from starring in any more films until it was approved by the censors. He expected her to help promote the film long before its release had been confirmed and only permitted her to appear in one other movie during that time, 1946's Young Widow. In 1947, Russell delved into the musical world before returning to film. But in 1953, she joined forces with another much sought-after Hollywood bombshell, Marilyn Monroe. Jane Russell painted a very different picture of Marilyn. While she and Marilyn eventually appeared in 1953's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes together and were without a doubt an incredible match on screen, their fates ultimately turned out to be dramatically different. Despite their differences, they became quite close. At first, all Jane saw was Marilyn's exquisite beauty, but in time she discovered she was actually quite sensitive and shy. There was a time when actor Tommy Noonan did a kissing scene with her. Jane overheard a couple of guys asking him after the shoot what it was like to kiss Miss Monroe. Apparently, he replied by saying it was like being swallowed alive. After Marilyn heard what he said, she ran to her dressing room crying. While Russell grew up around boys and knew how insensitive they could be, she suspected Monroe did not. Russell insisted Marilyn did not kill herself. Before she passed away, according to Russell, Monroe was planning on marrying baseball player Joe DiMaggio, and she also had a fresh new movie contract. Those details in tandem convinced Russell that Marilyn Monroe did not kill herself. Rather, she believed Monroe was killed. She concluded there was, as she put it, dirty tricks involved in her death. Russell further believed that Jack and Bobby Kennedy, both of whom were Marilyn's lovers, were somehow involved in her demise. Shortly after Monroe died, Jane met Bobby Kennedy. Russell said the moment he laid eyes on her, he gave her a look that seemed to indicate he was her enemy, but she refused to allow him to intimidate her. Jane Russell wasn't afraid to speak her mind when she wanted to. While Russell kept close guard of her own love life, denying that she and Hughes were ever lovers and keeping quiet whenever asked about her relationship with Frank Sinatra, she was fairly open about discussing Liza Minnelli and David Guest. Being Liza's friend, Russell attended her and Guest's lavish wedding, but sided with David after their bitter divorce. Russell's third husband, John Peoples, who worked in real estate, died in 1999 after he and Russell had been married for 25 years. After he passed away, Jane turned to booze for comfort. She quickly developed a problem with alcohol. She was 79 years old when she went to rehab, but after 30 days, she remained sober for the rest of her life. Jane Russell's failed marriages. Just 3 months after they walked down the aisle in August of 1968, Russell's second husband, Roger Barrett, suddenly died after suffering a heart attack. Jane took his death quite hard and called it the worst moment of her life. Her marriage to Roger was in the wake of her quarter-century-long marriage to her first husband, Robert Waterfield. Jane met Barrett when they were both kids, and even back then, they had huge crushes on each other. Russell eventually confirmed she and Barrett had an affair while she was still married to her first husband, but Waterfield swore up and down he'd always been faithful. Despite his claims of fidelity, Russell discovered he too had been having an extramarital affair with her secretary. She was devastated and subsequently divorced him. Robert and Russell adopted 3 children together because after having that botched abortion at age 18, Russell nearly died, and in the process, she was left infertile. For the last 40 years of her life, Russell devoted her life to the World Adoption International Fund, an organization for the adoption of children which she founded. Teen years. Marilyn's teen years were marked by a series of significant life events and challenges that ultimately shaped her identity and set her on the path to becoming an iconic Hollywood star. At age 16, Norma Jean married James Dougherty to avoid being sent back to foster care. This marked her first foray into adulthood, and the marriage offered some semblance of stability during a tumultuous period in her life. But the marriage was short-lived as World War II soon separated them when James enlisted in the military. With her husband overseas, Norma Jean took on factory work during the war. She worked at the Radioplane Munitions Factory, where she was discovered by a photographer while inspecting parachutes. This encounter sparked her interest in modeling and paved the way for her entry into the entertainment industry. Norma Jean's natural beauty and charisma led to a successful career as a pinup model. She became known for her photographs in men's magazines, which gained her recognition and a growing fan base. Her modeling work was instrumental in launching her career in the entertainment industry. During her teen years, she harbored ambitions of becoming an actress. She adopted the stage name Marilyn Monroe in 1946, combining her mother's maiden name, Monroe, and her grandmother's first name, Marilyn. This name change marked a pivotal moment in her transformation into the Hollywood legend she became. Her striking looks and burgeoning fame attracted the attention of talent scouts. In 1947, she signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox, marking the beginning of her film career. She also took acting classes to hone her craft, recognizing the importance of developing her talent. Despite her growing success, Marilyn's personal life during her teen years was marked by a series of personal challenges, including ongoing struggles with her mother's mental health issues, multiple marriages and divorces, and a sense of identity and belonging. Her mom. The relationship between Marilyn and her mother Gladys was marked by complexity, challenges, and deep emotional bonds, as well as periods of separation and instability. Norma Jean was born to Gladys in 1926, but her early childhood was marked by separation from her mother. Gladys struggled with mental health issues, which led to her being in the hospital frequently. This resulted in Norma Jean spending much of her early life in foster care and orphanages, separated from her mother at a young age. She had several reunions with her mother throughout her childhood, but these were often brief and punctuated by periods of separation due to Gladys's mental health struggles. These disruptions left a lasting impact on Norma Jean's sense of stability and belonging. The constant separations also contributed to her deep-seated feelings of abandonment and insecurity. These early experiences of instability left emotional scars that affected her throughout her life. Despite these challenges, Gladys did have a significant influence on Norma Jean's life. She instilled in her daughter a love for movies and the arts, fostering Norma Jean's early dreams of becoming an actress. At times, Norma Jean took on the role of caregiver for her mother. She tried to provide emotional support and care during Gladys's periods of stability, demonstrating her deep love for her mother despite the difficulties they faced. Gladys's mental health issues persisted throughout her life, and she remained in and out of psychiatric institutions. Norma Jean made efforts to maintain a connection with her mother, even as her own life began to change and she embarked on her journey in the entertainment industry. Before and after fame. After Marilyn was discovered and became a pinup model, she took acting classes and signed her first film contract with 20th Century Fox in 1947. This marked her entry into the world of Hollywood. Her fame skyrocketed in the 50s. She became a Hollywood icon, known for her beauty, charisma, and talent. Her films, including Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Some Like It Hot, and The 7-Year Itch, cemented her status as a Hollywood legend. Her personal life remained turbulent even after she achieved fame. She had a series of marriages and high-profile relationships, including with Joe DiMaggio, Arthur Miller, and others. Throughout her life, she struggled with anxiety, depression, and self-esteem issues. Her early experiences of instability and her rise to fame only added to her emotional challenges. Marilyn had well-documented struggles with substance abuse, including alcohol and prescription drugs. These issues impacted her personal life and her ability to maintain stable relationships. Despite her image as a sex symbol, she yearned for respect as a serious actress. She took her craft seriously, studying acting and seeking roles that would showcase her talent beyond her iconic looks. Her life came to a tragic end August 5, 1962, at age 36. She was found dead in her Brentwood, Los Angeles home from a drug overdose, a death that remains the subject of speculation and conspiracy theories. Marilyn's image. The images of Marilyn Monroe as a young, blonde bombshell have endured over the years as a powerful symbol of her influence and of the era in which she lived. Her iconic status as the ultimate sex symbols of the 50s and early 60s has transcended time, becoming an enduring and instantly recognizable symbol of both Hollywood glamour and the cultural shifts of that period. Her classic Hollywood beauty, with platinum blonde hair, radiant smile, and hourglass figure, is an archetype of timeless femininity. Her images continue to captivate audiences and serve as a standard of physical attractiveness, influencing generations of women who have sought to emulate her style and glamour. Her image also represents a moment in history when attitudes towards sexuality and femininity were evolving. She challenged traditional norms by embracing her sensuality and confidently projecting it on screen. Her iconic status as a blonde bombshell symbolizes a new era of sexual liberation and women's empowerment. Misty Rowe. Goodbye Norma Jean is a biopic film released in 1976. In the movie, Monroe's journey to stardom is chronicled with Rowe playing the lead role. Rowe did a fantastic job depicting the actress during her transition from Norma Jean, the birth name Monroe went by during her teen years, to the Marilyn Monroe we all know and love. Teresa Russell. In the British film Insignificance, which hit theaters in 1985, audiences are presented with an alternate history that follows four famous characters who converged in a New York City hotel one evening in 1954. These four figures were Albert Einstein, Joseph McCarthy, Joe DiMaggio, and Marilyn Monroe. While the film never explicitly calls these four by their real names, instead opting to refer to them as the physicist, senator, baseball player, and actress, it's clear who they're meant to depict. The film was made as a parody of 1950s celebrity culture and politics. Teresa Russell hit the ball out of the park, playing the all-too-familiar soft-spoken Hollywood actress, and she looked terrific wearing that halter-neck white dress. Paula Lane. Actress Paula Lane played Monroe in the 1989 film Goodnight, Sweet Marilyn. The movie was actually the follow-up to 1976's Goodbye, Norma Jean. In Goodnight, Sweet Marilyn, Misty Rowe reprised her role as young Norma Jean, while Lane played the adult Monroe. Susan Griffiths. Throughout her career, Griffiths has portrayed the some-like-it-hot actress on screen 12 times. She's the actress who has played Marilyn the most significant number of times. She not only played her in the 1991 TV film Marilyn and Me, but also in 3 different TV shows: Dark Skies, Time Cop, and Quantum Leap. Madonna. In 1984, Madonna made pop culture history when she appeared in the music video for her song Material Girl. Not only was the video a sensation, but it went on to be nominated for 2 MTV VMAs. Notably in the video, Madonna recreated Monroe's unforgettable pink dress moment from her Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend number in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. Poppy Montgomery. The 2001 2-episode miniseries Blonde, which was also based on Joyce Carol Oates' novel of the same name, starred actress Poppy Montgomery in the role of Marilyn. Montgomery found fame playing FBI agent Samantha Spade on the CBS drama Without a Trace. More recently, she played Detective Carrie Walls in the CBS police drama series Unforgettable. Mira Sorvino. In the critically acclaimed TV biopic Norma Jean and Marilyn, the duality of Monroe's 2 personas of Norma Jean and Marilyn are explored in detail. In the film, Mira Sorvino plays the iconic star at the peak of her professional career. Ashley Judd. In the previously mentioned made-for-TV film Norma Jean and Marilyn, Ashley Judd portrays Monroe's younger self. Both she and Mira Sorvino were nominated for Golden Globe Awards for Best Actress in a Miniseries or Television Motion Picture for their performances in the film. Blake Lively. Blake Lively perfectly channeled Marilyn while wearing a gown similar to what she wore in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes when she appeared in a dream sequence in the hit CW show Gossip Girl. Michelle Williams. Williams' portrayal of Monroe in the 2011 film My Week with Marilyn is arguably the most critically acclaimed depiction from the actresses featured in this video. Williams received BAFTA and Academy Award nominations for her performance as the actress in the film. Charlotte Sullivan. In the 2011 political miniseries The Kennedys, viewers got a glimpse into the private lives of the most powerful political family of the mid-20th century. Sullivan played Monroe during the time she had her high-profile affair with President John F. Kennedy. Catherine Hicks. In the 1980 TV film Marilyn the Untold Story, we got to see Hicks show us what it was like for Monroe as she climbed up the ladder to stardom. We also saw a depiction of what her relationships were like with her agent Johnny Hyde and her 3 husbands, Joe DiMaggio, Arthur Miller, and James Doherty. Barbara Niven. Niven depicted Monroe in a minor supporting role in the 1988 TV film The Rat Pack. In the film, Kennedy's affair with Marilyn is hinted at, as well as her relationship with Tinseltown's high society. Kelly Garner. In the acclaimed miniseries The Secret Life of Marilyn Monroe, which aired on Lifetime in 2015, Garner gave a powerful performance that showed off just how versatile of an actress she really is. The miniseries chronicles Monroe's rocky family life, specifically her relationship with her mom, Gladys Peel Baker, portrayed by Susan Sarandon. What's more amazing is the fact that before signing on to the project, Garner wasn't even a very big fan of the late star. She told Vanity Fair that while she wasn't a big enthusiast of Monroe, she believed every young actress has a little Marilyn in her. Melody Anderson. Anderson played Monroe in the 1993 TV film Marilyn and Bobby, Her Final Affair. The film gave viewers a fictional account of Marilyn's alleged affair with late Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Uma Thurman, Megan Hilty, and Katharine McPhee. In 2012, these 3 actresses took turns playing Monroe on the NBC musical drama series Smash. The series is about the staging of a fictional Marilyn Monroe musical aptly named Bombshell. Ana de Armas. De Armas is the latest star to portray Monroe on screen. She plays the late actress in the controversial new Netflix movie Blonde. While the film attempts to pay Monroe her due diligence, it takes a somewhat fictional look back on her life. Anna told the Sunday Times it was very challenging to perfect Monroe's famously breathy voice. She told the outlet it took her 9 months of dialect training and a few ADR sessions to get her signature vocal delivery down. While the film has received a lukewarm reception from critics, de Armas has received rave reviews for her performance. According to a review in IndieWire, critic Sophie Monks-Kaufman found that her uncanny resemblance to Monroe took the film a long way. In another review published in The Hollywood Reporter, critic David Rooney found that de Armas's raw performance strips the most overanalyzed woman in pop culture history bare, both metaphorically and literally. Now it's time to hear from you. Have you seen any of these great performances of Marilyn Monroe? Who do you think played her the best? Let us know in the comment section below.